At Matthew 24:45-47, we read that for the time of the end, Jesus would appoint a faithful and discreet slave or governing body to explain the Bible to his followers and help them to grow in understanding of the truth. Whereas Jesus' teachings and the written word of God are inspired, the faithful and discreet slave is not inspired, although it champions the truth. Nevertheless, the faithful slave provides spiritual food, whereas in the first century there was supernatural knowledge available for apostles and Bible writers. In the time of the end, Jehovah does not bestow this miraculous gift anymore, as explained at 1 Corinthians 13:8. Although there is no divine inspiration today, still Jesus leads his people progressively through the services of the faithful slave. Jesus trusts that the imperfect faithful slave will do its best to convey spiritual food. Do you also trust the slave? Whereas the truth of God's word does not change, our understanding of the truth does change because we are not perfect yet. We understand more about the truth today than Christians in the first century. Do we keep up with the progressive understanding of truth? Daniel was told, "Many will rove about, and the true knowledge will become abundant." This is a gradual process. We are still roving about.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy!
Mikey, so in one short sentence, tell me what this video is going to be about.
When stupid meets stupidity. And as you saw from the opening clip, we're still roving about. Jesus would appoint a faithful and discreet slave. No, that's not what Jesus said. Jesus asked a question, who really is?
And it was a parable. Even Watchtower admits that's a parable. So where in the Bible does it say that Jesus was going to appoint a faithful and discreet slave?
See, and this is why Watchtower has to change their qualifiers from time to time, because when you go back to that parable, who really is a faithful and discreet slave, yada yada yada. But if that slave ever turns and starts beating on the master's household, well, this is what Watchtower has done from day one. They have beaten on Christianity. In fact, they have even put Christians as part of Babylon the Great. They won't even accept another faction of Christianity as being part of the Christian Brotherhood. No, 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 no. Watchtower has continuously decimated Christians. So by extension, Watchtower and Babel Crap Society, and especially you, Loesch, you have an absolute wrong interpretation of who the faithful and the evil slave is, because you are the evil slave, because from day one you've done nothing but bash other Christians. But hey, why not? Because you got Peter bashing Paul, you got the writer of the book of Revelation, supposedly John, bashing the Apostle Paul. You've got nothing but this internal conflict. Christians bashing Christians.
Okay, so this is going to be long. We've got a lot of information here. I actually started researching this like a week ago, and all last weekend I was working on this, and I kept telling Mikey my head hurts because it goes down so many different holes. Now, what started this is many of you asked us to do a video about the new article about the King of the North and the King of the South. And that doesn't just entail that little article. It opens several rabbit holes, so hopefully you will enjoy this information, because we're going to be going back into history, what we experienced personally in the 90s.
Yeah. And really for us it was kind of like one of those, wait a minute, Watchtower's wrong about this.
And we've even mentioned it before, that we were sitting in, I can't remember, was it an assembly or convention?
It was a district convention.
District convention. And it was a black brother, and he was reading about the prophecies.
I remember it
the
well.
time and the end. And he closed his Bible and put it on the podium. And he says, brothers and sisters, every single one of these prophecies have been fulfilled except for one, and that is the cry of peace and security. And Mike and I looked at each other and said, no, it's not, because there is no king of the north right now.
See, and when you study the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses, now I don't know whether they do it now or not, because it's too easy to destroy their theology regarding the king of the north and the king of the south. But at the time, when the Soviet Union, the Russian bloc fell, communism fell, Watchtower came out with articles saying there is no king of the north, there is no king of the north, but at the same time they were teaching through your studies of the book of Revelation that at the time of the end, the great tribulation, when Jehovah brings Armageddon, there's going to be a king of the north, because it's Jehovah that destroys both the king of the north and the king in the south. This is what we were indoctrinated with. So when this brother come out and said, brothers and sisters, there's only one more prophecy, and then everybody erupts, and this apply, just like what Christians would do when something, that just gives you goosebumps. Oh my God, this is so good. We're so close to the end. And Kim and I turned to each other and said, that's not true. That was one of those aha moments. That's when the seed, Watchtower, that's when you planted this particular seed of doubt right here, and make no mistake about it.
Well, why don't we just read that article that came out after this district convention?
Let's do.
Okay, I've got the bond volume here. This is the Watchtower 1993. Oh, I remember it so well.
Of course.
November 1st. And the name of the article is The Final Victory of Michael the Great Prince. Oh, we're all excited about this. Over on page 21, under the subheading, Final Campaign of the Northern King. Paragraph 12. So who is the King of the North now? Because remember, like Mike just said,
That's right.
at that time, the Soviet Union had been disintegrated, and nobody knew, because in 91, the wall came down there, and
Berlin Wall.
yeah,
The communistic bloc seemed to be crumbling.
and it did appear like soon there was going to be peace and security, and this brother may get everybody all worked up and excited, but we knew that this couldn't be so, because the Soviet Union, the King of the North, had just been dissolved.
And we also knew that in the time of the end, Jehovah's people would be persecuted. And according to this article, in the timing of that talk, in the declaration of only one more prophecy to be fulfilled, there was a whole line of prophecy that was not being fulfilled as it pertained to the King of the North.
So back to the article here. So who is the King of the North now? Is he to be identified with one of the countries that were part of the old Soviet Union? Or is he changing identity completely, as he has a number of times before? We cannot say. Who will be the King of the North when Daniel 11:44 and 45 is fulfilled? Will the rivalry between the two kings flare up again? And what of the huge nuclear stockpiles that still exist in a number of lands? Only time will provide the answers to these questions.
Wait a minute. But you, Jehovah's Witnesses, are God's Spirit-directed organization. How is it that you can say, we don't know, only time will tell? You mean Jehovah hasn't revealed this to you? I mean, my God, in 1993, we were like this close to the end of the system. And yet you're proclaiming and you're professing you don't know. You've never known. You know why? Because in Russell's day, he started you guys bathing in a pile of cow poop. Warm, steamy cow poop. And you've been diving deeper and deeper and deeper in that pile of cow poop ever since.
The governing body has been prayerfully considering recent events. And we know that in 1991, the Soviet Union came to an end. So who is the king of the North? Well, after prayerfully considering it and the matter of the pushing, we're assuring you that what we see after prayerfully considering it is that Russia and its allies, King of the North. Now, here's some reasoning. See, the Soviet Union disbanded. Russia came up from the rubble of the Soviet Union along with its allies. And here's some of the facts. Two things have become apparent. Russia and its allies are continuing to engage in a pushing with the King of the South, and we'll get to that pushing point shortly. And the second, they are taking the lead in persecuting and opposing God's people. Now, notice what the pushing includes: electronic espionage, computer attacks, trade wars, and that's what they call them, and the hostile flooding into surrounding territory. These are recurring features of the news headlines. You're aware of them. So someone, well, has the King of the North been inactive? Well, no. It appears he's never been this busy with the pushing with the King of the South. So this is it. At this point, we're confident to share with you Russia and its allies are the King of the North, and they're engaged in this pushing. In fact, last month, they had the largest war games, Russia did, since the Soviet Union was in existence, way back in the 80s. And they had their allies with them in the war game. So we're confident this is it. This is the King of the North, and that's what's involved at this time with the pushing, locking horns with each other. So is there going to be another time related to Bible prophecy where the faithful slave will be able to say to you, this is it?
You guys.
Really interesting, because now remember, back in the 90s, all of us Jehovah's Witnesses at that time were told that there was no King of the North at that time. Aunt Mo here is basically saying that even though the Soviet Union disbanded, Russia was still the King of the North, that sprang from the ashes.
Right. But now I have a political question. Since the current fever in this country happens to be the Trump-Russian collusion, that would appear to me that Russia and the United States are allies, wouldn't it? By extension of the political dialogue that seems to be in everybody's tongues these days. So Watchtower, how does that play into the King of the North and the King of the South? Because you've always proclaimed the United States, and along with its dual power, Great Britain, are the dual world power. So if Trump, by the political fever that's being thrown out there, Trump is in collusion with Russia, then that makes the Russians and the United States part of that dual world power.
That means the King of the North and the King of the South are working together.
This is why, friends, when you decide to take on a study such as the King of the North and the King of the South, you have to put some of the political dialogue into this. That's why you can't trust what these governing idiots tell you, because they're swimming in the bullshit, and we're going to show you how deep this bullshit goes, because it involves 1914, because you cannot get away from studying the King of the North and the King of the South as it pertains to the Watchtower theology of 1914. You can't do it because they're linked together. So when you recognize that the King of the North fails in Bible prophecy, the King of the South fails in Bible prophecy as it's connected to 1914, Watchtower has no other option but to come up with another pile of bullshit. And it's called the overlapping generations.
Well, that's why, we say, is the governing body, Watchtower, lying about their history?
Yes.
And I think we can prove it here. Now, first, we all know that now in modern present day, they say they do not prophesy. They are not prophets because they have been hammered for being false prophets. So remember that. They say they are not prophets. They do not prophesy today. Oh, yeah. June 15th, 1964, Watchtower.
I just have to make a qualifier here.
Okay.
This is why it's so important for you Jehovah's Witnesses to stay the hell off of jw.org when you're researching this, because I can damn well guarantee you that if you were to read this article in your hard copy alongside with what they printed on jw.org, you're going to find they've changed it.
Possibly, yeah. Now, along these lines, we've also got something, believe it or not, from eBay, a Jehovah's Witness on eBay that I've been having some dialogue with. And it's really interesting that they're pushing the same thing that Aunt Mo is saying in this talk.
So now you got to wonder, Aunt Mo, governing idiots, how much time is being counted now, since you can't go from door to door. Is this one little, back door way of counting time, putting some of your publications on eBay or other people's publications on eBay and then counting time?
Exactly. Now, getting back to prophesying, they claim they do not prophesy. And I've got a bond volume here. The 1964 Watchtower, June 15th, page 365, under the subheading, The Kingdom's Establishment. And the name of the article is The God of Progressive Revelation.
Progressive. Yeah, you mean the organization is Progressive Revelation.
Yeah. The Kingdom's Establishment, page 365, paragraph 22. As Jehovah revealed his truths by means of the first century Christian congregation, so he does today by means of the present day Christian congregation. Through this agency, he is having carried out prophesying on an intensified and unparalleled scale. So there they admit the organization does prophesy.
On an unparalleled scale.
All this activity is not an accident. Jehovah is the one behind all of it. So remember that. Jehovah is behind all of this unparalleled prophesying.
The abundance of spiritual food and the amazing details of Jehovah's purposes that have been revealed to Jehovah's anointed witnesses governing body. See, this is why...
Are clear evidence.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when stupid meets stupidity.
Yeah. Well, even over here on paragraph 20, it says a constant supply of progressively unsealed truths was assured. This is pictured at Revelation 5:1.
Unsealed truths? How is it that you could be proclaiming, one more prophecy, the cry of peace and security? That was presented as an unsealed truth, but yet how many more like Kim and I sat in that audience that didn't clap because we didn't clap because we saw immediately that they were wrong in making that prophecy, that proclamation, because we knew based on what we were taught by Watchtower there was no King of the North, and it's Jehovah that destroys both the King of the North and the King of the South according to this bullshit theology.
Okay. Now, the clip we had played a few minutes ago with Aunt Mo, this was from the 2018 annual meeting. It was a talk called This Is It. Now, I want to play another short clip of him talking about this World magazine that was published in 1914.
New World magazine. And it was widely read at the time, and I guess I remember about 1931 they went out of business. But here, End of All Kingdoms in 1914, Millennial Dawners 25-Year Prophecy. Widely read, other newspapers covered it. They made comments here about the terrific war outbreak in Europe has fulfilled an extraordinary prophecy. For a quarter of a century past, through preachers and through press, the international Bible students, best known as Millennial Dawners, have been proclaiming to the world that the day of wrath prophesied in the Bible would dawn in 1914. Look out for 1914.
There was just so much, in this talk that it's difficult to cover everything. But I did want to mention, you notice he only reads, a small part of that article about how the millennial dawners, and look that up. That is a whole, sun worship name to begin with. Rosicrucian type deal.
Sun worship, S-U-N, not S-O-N.
Yeah. But they are pushing this narrative that even the Bible students always knew 1914 was going to be the beginning of the end. This is not true. This is not true, and we have the evidence here.
Yeah, they're lying about their history.
Yeah. So first I want to read this. This is the Watchtower, 1993 bond volume, January 15th issue. Page 4 is an article called Caught Away to Meet the Lord. How? Now over on page 5, there's a subheading that says Christ's presence. The second paragraph underneath that subheading. When a foreign head of state visits a country, the dates of his presence there are generally announced. This has been true of the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ. The Watchtower has consistently presented evidence to honest-hearted students of Bible prophecy that Jesus' presence in heavenly kingdom power began in 1914. That is a lie.
Now, one thing you Jehovah's Witnesses have to keep in mind is don't be distracted with Watchtower's qualifiers. And they put a qualifier in this by saying the Watchtower. They have it italicized, meaning specifically the magazine, not the organization. So you have to be very careful in reading this literature and understand that they put false qualifiers, because when they say the Watchtower in parentheses, they mean specifically the magazine, because in other Watchtower publications they contradict. So it very well could be, and it's a logical assumption to say the Watchtower has been consistent in this, meaning specifically the magazine.
And that's why I could prove them liars.
But not the organization. So you when you read this stuff, you have to realize that they are one in the same, and they put a very distracting qualifier on articles such as this, because they know what the organization has preached and published in the past in other Christian publications.
Now, I'm going to put a link down below to an eBay seller. They are selling this magazine article that Aunt Mo has a copy of. And their seller is lisa.joey.wit. And I believe they're Jehovah's Witnesses from the description that is underneath, because I'm going to read this. I want you to see that the Jehovah's Witnesses are making themselves liars by pushing what the governing body tells them. And it's really sad, because these may be really nice people who honestly believe this, but they won't go do their actual history and research to find this out. So I'm going to read this description. Like I said, I'm going to put the link down below to this. Watchtower may go, basically after them and make them take this down. But they're selling a copy of this article on an 8x11 piece of paper, and they're charging $10 for this 2-page article.
You mean just printing it off their printer?
But they'll use old-looking paper.
Only spending pennies to do this, just a minute piece of ink,
$10,
and then charged. What a snare and a racket!
Yeah. And I was gonna buy it, because I would like this article, but I figured on just an 8x11 sheet that it's gonna be really small print and I won't be able to see this. But this is what their description says. 2014 is the 100-year anniversary of God's kingdom ruled by Christ. This is a facsimile reproduction of the extremely rare The World magazine, a leading paper in New York City in 1914. This magazine is mentioned at the 2018 annual meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses in the part, this is it, about how Jehovah's people foretold the true prophecy about a global war in 1914. Now, what Atmo says, I mean, it's kind of a stretch of a little bit that there was going to be a global war in 1914. But we know Jehovah's Witnesses pushed this because we know that's what happened. But back then, they really didn't know,
Right.
Yeah. In 1914, as seen by secular news outlets and magazines such as this one. 6 exclamation points. This article has also been mentioned in several Watchtower publications such as Jehovah's Witnesses Proclaimers of God's Kingdom. Box on page 60. And you can do a search of Watchtower literature and it's always quoted,
Yep.
In part. They won't put the whole thing, but in part. The April 1st, 1984 Watchtower, page 5, the 1975 yearbook, page 75, just to name a few. It was famous for mentioning what the International Bible Students, now Jehovah's Witnesses, it's not what it says, it called them millennial dawners.
Right.
Even Aunt Mo read that. Has been saying for 25 years about a global wartime of trouble happening in the year 1914. Because it was the end of the Gentile times as seen in the picture with the crown being removed from the nations of earth. Revelation 11:15. So they're turning this into a preaching session
That's
on
what
eBay.
they're doing.
eBay.
That's why I said earlier how much time is being counted in doing this. Watchtower.
And the seventh angel blew his trumpet, and loud voices occurred in heaven, saying, the kingdom of the world did become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will rule as king forever and ever. This article is shown as only the top portion, as the rest of the article was unprintable. So you're going to pay $10 just for, the top part of this article.
Wow. Well, that's what you would call a half-truth and lie.
Yeah.
Because if you can't read the rest of the article, who knows whether the writer of the rest of the article started calling bullshit.
Since it was originally on a large newspaper with a 2-page article, it is printed on archaic parchment-style paper to look as authentic as possible. Now, Mikey loves this next little paragraph in their description. You guys are going to love this. JW.org is ranked #1 most visited religious website out of 77,000.
No, it's not. Bible Hub is visited more than that. And I guarantee this person right here that the numbers of people visiting JW.org are ex-members, because we're grabbing articles such as this and calling bullshit.
I visit JW myself, probably at least half a dozen times every week. So we're all being counted in that number.
That's right, because Watchtower doesn't have a way to separate, the apostates visiting the website, grabbing clips of these talks, grabbing articles. I mean, even Elder's wife, ex-JW Elder's wife Jane Doe says, I go to their JW.org to read their articles. I Am Truth Seeker this morning put up a video stating she went to JW.org to get an article. Watchtower, stop lying to your members, because we know that the Jehovah's Witnesses really don't give a crap about what you've been printing. All they want to do is sit and get turned on by the personalities that are now in front of the camera. Because decades ago, none of us knew who the governing body was. None of us did. Why? Because you wanted to present yourselves as not being on a pedestal, but now you have.
But you notice they don't put any clarification, no qualifier, no link, nothing. That's just them saying this. And also, Michael mentioned Bible Hub. What about Bible study tools? Any of those type of websites. So in editing this, I decided just to go do a Google search of what was the top religious websites. Now, the one is top Christian sites, and the other one is the top religious sites, because they view the two as different. But even then, jw.org isn't even in the top 10. And this one here, the top religious sites, they weren't even in the top 50. So I'm going to put the links down below to those also. And so for them to say this is...
Well, not only that, they also turn this little spiel about jw.org being the #1 ranked most visited religious website. Here's the interesting thing. The next sentence now becomes another opportunity to count time. The mountain, okay, it goes on and saying, in the final part of the days, the mountain of the house of Jehovah will become firmly established above the top of the mountains, and it will be raised above. Now, above in both in this sentence structure is all capitalized. So now it's giving emphasis to the word Jehovah is going to be above everybody, above the hills, and to it all. There you again, all is capitalized. So it gives specific emphasis. All the nations will stream. Hey, I got news for you, eBay seller. Your organization, this mountain of Jehovah, everybody's leaving. We have little sayings in this apostate community such as PIMO, physically in, mentally out. You don't know how many PIMOs there are worldwide any more than we don't know. But we do know that there is a vast army of PIMOs. How do we know? Because we're getting leaked inside information. We're getting leaked secret elders letters. The only reason why they're staying in this organization is because there is the threat of destroying the family unit that Watchtower puts in everybody's mind. And I guarantee that if this Jehovah's Witness trying to sell this little article right here was to be honest with themselves, they would realize that this organization is dying.
Well, they won't, because they won't go check out any actual facts. Just like they say, this is the most #1 most translated website out of billions. There again, what proof do they have? Have they gone to like the Mormons' website to see how many languages it's translated in?
Right.
Have they gone to any of the Islamic sites to see how many languages they have been translated in? Have they gone to the Catholic site to see how many languages their website is translated in? So to say this kind of stuff is totally untrue.
See, this is what happens when you deal with a biased such as Watchtower, and then trying to make $10. Trying to make $10.
And Watchtower, this Lisa and Joey, on the eBay thing, it says they're in Charleston, South Carolina, here in the United States.
Yeah.
So if that helps you narrow down to go after them, because this is something else I want to say. This is in their description. When searching eBay and you type in Watchtower, you get nearly 5,000 results, some of which have no connection at all with the Watchtower Society, but many do. Since the Proclaimer's book came out in 1995, the desire to acquire Watchtower memorabilia and have a personal library or museum of Watchtower items has grown. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
The Watchtower Society itself now has an archive department known as Writing Archives, which was established by the Writing Committee of the governing body to preserve our rich theocratic history. Many of the hundreds of items I offer on eBay are reproductions from the original items which have been donated to the archive department.
So you have a Jehovah's Witness making money off of old Watchtower literature. Watchtower, how's that working out for you? Is there, like a nominal kickback from this Jehovah's Witness selling copies of these articles? How are you involved with this Watchtower? Is this one of your, board members in Pennsylvania doing this? Come on, Watchtower. We all see what's going on here. This person is making an opportunity to make money off your copies of your old literature. I mean, I just gotta sit and laugh. You know, because look. In the time of the end, Jesus said that he would provide a faithful slave. Well, the faithful slave would be making sure that, you know, your members would still be being fed the bullshit you were fed 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago.
Okay, now getting into I can prove them wrong. Now, I have a clip here from Samuel Hurd where he talks about the Bible students.
At the kingdom's birth in 1914, the Bible students were not exactly sure what was going to happen, but they knew it would be a pivotal year. For decades, they had been singing that the Gentile times were closing and that the kings had had their day.
Now, as you heard, Samuel Hurd said the Bible students didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but it was a pivotal year.
Now keep in mind, Jehovah is in charge of all of this, as we read earlier.
Now, remember also, I read in that Watchtower where it said the Watchtower has consistently said 1914 was going to be Christ's presence. Okay, now this is a bond volume. Now these were Watchtower reprints done, I believe, in the 30s or 40s. And I happen to have a set of these. Well, I'm missing one, but I have almost a complete set. So the 1894 Watchtower. You guys are going to love this one. Okay, the 1894 Watchtower, July 15th, 1894, page 226. The name of the little tiny subheading, as you can see, can it be delayed until 1914? So there was some Bible students even wondering if it was going to last until 1914. I'm going to read this.
So now keep in mind, what they're focusing on is the conclusion of the system of things.
Yeah. Can it be delayed until 1914? 17 years ago, people said concerning the time features presented in Millennial Dawn, that is the Russell's set of, red books that he did, studies in the scriptures. They originally were called the Millennial Dawns. They seem reasonable in many respects, but surely no radical changes could occur between now and the close of 1914. If you had proved that they would come about in a century or two, it would seem much more probable.
Well, I just got to backtrack for a minute. They seem reasonable. I don't have my glasses. They seem reasonable
in many respects.
In many respects, but surely no such radical changes could occur between now, which would be what year?
1894.
Okay, between 1894, meaning the now, and the close of 1914. Before 1914 closed, this world was embroiled in the Great War, which became World War I. Guess what, Jehovah's Witnesses? That was a radical change. And you say no radical change could happen between 1894 and the close of 1914. There was a radical change.
Yeah, there was a radical change.
There was a radical change.
Before the end of December 1914.
And I did this in a video a long time ago. It's probably on our first channel, which is gone, but I remember doing this. World War I changed how wars in the world were fought. Prior to World War I, wars were only fought on the ground. Now they're fought from the air. So that is a radical change by any historian's description, Watchtower. So you're wrong even in that sentence.
Okay, if you had proved that they would come about in a century or two, it would seem much more probable. Well, we see how much change there's been in,
Yeah.
116 years.
So you friends understand what this statement is saying? They were predicting the end of the system before 1914, not the end of the Gentile times and all this other nonsense that they had to spew because 1914 came and went. So they had to, they had to dig a little deeper and throw a little bit more of the bullshit out in the air.
Okay, back to the article. What changes have since occurred and what velocity is gained daily? The old is quickly passing and the new is coming in. Now, in view of recent labor troubles and threatened anarchy, our readers are writing to know if there may not be a mistake in the 1914 date. They say that they do not see how present conditions can hold out so long under the strain.
This is 1894.
Surprise, Russell and Bible students. You'd be surprised what was going on now. Oy vey. We see no reason for changing the figures.
No, instead of changing the figures, now let's make the whole bullshit overlap.
We see no reason for changing the figures, nor could we change them if we would. They are, we believe, God's dates.
Yeah.
These are God's dates. And remember, I read in that other article, a little more present time, that God is in control of all of this prophesying.
That's why they're roving about.
Yeah, they are, we believe, God's dates, not ours. Now, this is the aha moment for this Watchtower article, and this is why I can say this proves them liars. But bear in mind that the end of 1914 is not the date for the beginning. See, it is not the date for the beginning. They did not believe Jesus was coming in 1914 invisibly, and then
That's right.
it would go on till the end.
See, and that's where Watchtower has made liars out of every Jehovah's Witnesses, including us, because we used to go from door to door saying, what? 1914 was the beginning of the end. This article right here says it was not the beginning of the end.
Yeah, see, but bear in mind that the end of 1914 is not the date for the beginning, which is italicized. Beginning is italicized. But for the end of the times of trouble.
And then they go and quote other historians and other magazines that that turn to 1914 as the beginning of the times of the trouble.
We see no reason for changing from our opinion expressed in the view presented in the Watchtower of January 15th, 1892. We advise that it be read again. Now, I'm not going to go, I do have that magazine, but I am not going to go read it because we all know they did not see this as the beginning of
The conclusion of this.
Christ's return. So whatever they say today, they have not been consistent because the Watchtower in 1894 said that this is not the beginning. This will be the end of the troubled times.
And they couldn't see how it would even last the whole year of 1914. They were predicting that before the end of 1914 was going to close, so would the system of things under the rule of Jesus. Never happened.
Okay, so I happen to have, let's see, what year was this one printed? I have the 1917 edition of the Finished Mystery.
Sun worship.
I don't want to digress. But when you go to page 66 in this book, see, and they go by the scriptures, because they're covering Revelation. Chapter 3, verse 16. So then, the spring of 1878, corresponding to the date at which our Lord assumed the office of king, rode on the ass, cleansed the temple of its money changers, and wept over and gave up to desolation that nominal church or kingdom, marks the date from which the nominal church systems are not the mouthpieces of God, nor in any degree recognized by Him. So it was the spring of 1878, corresponding to the date at which our Lord assumed the office of king. So they believed he assumed the office in 1878.
Not 1914. See, he wasn't established as king in 1914. And proof of that was as he threw Satan down to the vicinity of the earth and World War I started.
Now, in the same book, on page 68, it talks about the legalities of, the end of this time period. But when you go down to chapter 3, verse 20, it says, "Behold, I stand at the door." And their comment is, "Some of the scriptures, which when understood in their connections and significance, prove that the Lord's second advent," that's
or
him,
second coming.
that's coming, the Lord's second advent occurred in the fall of 1874. And they go on, there are 88 proofs that Jesus' second advent occurred in 1878. It goes clear over to like page 70, 71.
Seems like the King of the North is quickly becoming the Watchtower and Bible Crap Society because they're the ones that's harming humanity.
But see, they thought Jesus' second advent or coming was in 1874. So when they say they consistently have said this in Watchtower, like Mike says, oh, well, this doesn't count because it's not actually in a Watchtower.
But it's still their publication.
But I read it right from the 1894 Watchtower. And there's also a couple of other of Russell's books. The Time is at Hand, the 1911 edition, page 239. The year 1878 clearly marks the time for the actual assuming of power as King of Kings by our present spiritual invisible Lord. And then I read, that article about the Zion's Watchtower in 1894. See, that's what I mean. This rabbit hole went so deep because you have the Jehovah's Witnesses, even on eBay, telling this to the entire world, and they do not know the true facts.
See, so you current Jehovah's Witnesses have got to comprehend if they were wrong about the second advent of Jesus, if they were wrong about saying the end of the system would happen before 1914, they had to swap and say, oh no, that was the beginning of the end. Then you cannot take with any seriousness their explanation of the King of the North and the King of the South. So when it comes to the King of the North and the King of the South, I'm going to just show you, friends, how simple it is to show that the Watchtower Bible Crap Society don't have a clue what they're talking about.
This was another aha moment.
Yeah, it was. You all remember studying the Daniel book, Daniel's prophecy? Do you all remember the image on page 139? Remember that? Right here. Watchtower put in print the Anglo-American world power from 1763 CE. You see, Watchtower had to change that little diddly. Why? Because with a simple study of history, you even study this in high school, and I knew this even more back then because I had studied the French and Indian Wars, the American Revolution, the Civil War, but prior to the Civil War, I knew about the War of 1812. That's when the British Empire burnt the White House to the ground. How could they possibly have been the dual world power since 1763 when part of that dual world power is burning down the seat of power of the other half of the world power? It wouldn't happen.
I remember when you told your mom that.
Do tell, because it's quite funny.
Yeah, and he said they're wrong. And he told her about the War of 1812. And she says, oh no, Michael, don't say they're wrong. Don't ever say they're wrong.
Well, what actually led up to me saying Watchtower was wrong is because my mother had asked me how I felt about the article where Watchtower studied, and we didn't study it because we just didn't bother at that point. But Watchtower came out and said that the dual world power, they were actually changing what they were saying right here. Because they said that they became the dual world power in 1914 and they solidified it by the end of World War II. And I said, yeah, I already know that. And she said, how did you know that? I says, because they were wrong about this, because they put the dual angle of world power from 1763. And I told my mother what I just explained to you friends. You don't burn down the seat of power if you're the dual world power. You don't do that. But the British did that in 1812. So I knew Watchtower was wrong when I studied this. But you know, like the good silent Jehovah Witness, you leave it in you leave it in the hands of the faithful and discreet slave, because I was taught to trust them. And they were wrong. But it's that simple. It's that easy to identify. All you got to do is know a little bit about history and dates and things like this. Just like Jeremiah and Ezekiel containing two false prophecies. It's that simple. Study history and then compare it to Bible history or the BS of any Christian religious organization, and you're going to see just how wrong they are.
Yeah, you know, and just like what is in here and in this Watchtower from 1894. It's easy to find. Any Jehovah Witness can look this up. Yeah, I know Watchtower, you know, the #1 most visited religious website in the world.
No, it's not.
No. But I'm going to put the link down below to this Watchtower so that you all can look at it yourself. Because this was in print in their Watchtower.
That's right.
So for them to say they were consistently saying 1914 was going to be the beginning of Christ's invisible parousia or reign or kingdom is false.
It's a lie.
So doesn't that make them false prophets?
Exactly. So when it comes to the king of the north and the king of the south, we've given solid evidence, undeniable evidence, that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So why are you Jehovah's Witnesses getting all worked up now because Watchtower is proclaiming, you know, Russia is the king of the north? The only reason why they're doing that is because Russia has got their neck in the proverbial noose. Because they are under fire in Russia. But I guarantee you, friends, that if this whole thing was happening in Australia, Australia would become the king of the north. I guarantee you if this was happening in
China?
China is the king of the north.
Well, see, that's why they have to say Russia and their allies.
And their allies.
An article has come out by our Dracula boy, you know, Massimo Introvine. He has written an article, and I'll put the link down below, that China is promoting and, you know, very positive to Russia banning Jehovah's Witnesses. So now this makes China one of Russia's allies as king of the north.
But they don't realize that the government in Australia, who is putting restrictions on the Watchtower Babel Crap Society by taking away their charity status and whatever it is that they're going to do because they won't join the redress scheme, they will become the king of the north. And then sooner or later, here comes Canada, because we all know that, you know, Canada's joining in all of this because they're not Christians. They're an organization that is hiding child sexual abuse. That's why they're going after this religion. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is the #1 reason, because in a free society, they don't care what God you want to worship for, and work for. They don't care. See, worship, workshop, worship, figure it out. It's all been laid out by other people before Kim and I. It's just that simple. avail yourself to research. They don't care if you even want to worship Satan, because with the 501c3, a group of Satanists can become tax-free. They don't care. But when it comes to harming children, now the governments care. And this is when the governments are being forced, not by Jehovah putting it in their hearts, as Watchtower proclaims and prophesies. No, it's because ex-members have had enough. And the New World Order is here. And it's YouTube, because ex-members can now speak their piece and governments are paying attention. When we can put copies of what Watchtower wrote 100 years ago showing that they lied, where they proclaimed 1914 is going to be the end, not the beginning. Now we can sit here and profess and show the nature of this wild beast of Watchtower and the harm that it has caused because of their overlapping theology. Jehovah's Witnesses, there's not going to be too much time left before you're going to have to get out of this organization, because that generation of 1914 is dead and gone. That prophecy has failed miserably, and there are more and more and more ex-Jehovah's Witnesses getting in front of a camera, going on YouTube. Hell, there's even a new YouTuber out there. I forget the name of his channel right now. I think it's Almost Fading or Still Fading. And he puts a mask over his face, dark sunglasses on, and some sort of hat. He's still in. He's still in, and he can see the bullshit.
Well, look at Persecution Delusion. Hi, sweetie, a new YouTuber. She did her first video just the other day. Great video. And she says that, you know, basically she's still a PIMO.
Still a PIMO.
And she's starting to do videos. And she was doing it on the food distribution thing, which is really good. You need to go check it out.
And she has her face right in front of the camera. You see, Watchtower? The fear. You are losing control because the fear is slipping through your fingers.
Well, the thing is I know of several PIMOs who are starting to do videos now. And, you know, well, like ex-elder's wife Jane Doe, you know, our friend, and she even says all the time, what am I saying that is not in their own literature and in the Bible? So let them haul me before the elders for judicial hearing, because she says I'm not saying anything that isn't in the Bible or in their literature. But we know how that's going to work out, because, you know, we were going to be hauled in before judicial hearing for what was in their literature.
Yeah.
You know, the penis on the songbook type deal.
Penis in the back of the songbook. So you Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to recognize that the only reason why you are associated with this organization is because Watchtower has fed you nothing but false hopes. See, back...
And they hold your family hostage.
And they hold your family hostage. When you can find the courage like I did when we first started our YouTube channel, I got in front of this camera and I looked Watchtower right in the face and I said, you keep my mother. I don't care. You keep my family. You keep my cousins. I don't care. Watchtower has zero control over Kim and I. Because that's what it's going to take, is for a lot of you friends to recognize that no matter what, not everybody's family member is going to escape. But how much do you value your personal freedom and your life in being able to move away from this bullcrap? You have to be able to say, keep them, Watchtower. I no longer care.
Yeah. Now, also, we ran out of time, and I was going to read from this book here. Many of you have never even seen this or heard about this. This is called Jehovah's Witnesses in the Divine Purpose. This is from 1959, and I just happen to have a hard copy. But very interesting book, but they even mention that World magazine that Aunt Mo had, and they give a lot more of the quote of the article that was in there. And also, before our battery runs out, I just want to say, I know many of you have tried calling us. Our landline is dead. The phone repair guy is coming tomorrow.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
They will be able to fix it, but you know, we hear the phone ringing, but when we pick it up, it's just buzzing. And we've been having trouble with it now for a week or two, and the phone company keeps telling me it's fine.
There's nothing
I
wrong.
keep telling them, no, it's not fine, but we cannot call out and we cannot accept calls. So we're fine. I know many of you are probably, you know, calling because you haven't heard from us, but our landline is dead. So if you absolutely have to get a hold of us, just send me an email and just put urgent in it, and I will see it.
Yes. So, for this topic, King of the North and the King of the South, doesn't matter what Watchtower tries to do, because they were wrong in the past, and they're going to be wrong now.
Still wrong.
They're still wrong. So you Jehovah's Witnesses do not need to get worked up about the King of the North and the King of the South, because they were wrong when they said there's only one more prophecy to be fulfilled, and that's a cry of peace and security. They were wrong with that.
They were wrong in that 1993 Watchtower I read, where they said there was no King of the North at that time, because now they're saying even though the Soviet Union broke up, Russia sprang from its ashes.
So,
like a phoenix.
Like a phoenix. Exactly. Like a phoenix.
Just like they're doing now, a phoenix corporation. You
Yeah.
know, Watchtower is imploding, and from its ashes will rise a new organization.
JW.
You know, JW.org.
And they will be an online religion.
Exactly. Exactly. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I know this was long, and there was a lot of information to cover. The
Having
thing
to put
is,
up with me.
putting up with him and his ranting. But thank you so much for all of the information you guys are sending us, and you know, links and articles and everything. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you all have a wonderful week.
And God bless. Bye.
Bye.